In the early days of the internet, radical libertarians were scattered, lonely, and faceless. Without direction, they resigned to scour the web, sifting through content providers in a wasteland plagued by YouTube demonetization, Facebook jail, and covert internet censorship. But then, in 2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.
All right. What's up, people? This is your new host for the day. This is Tony Rockamora of Don't Waste Your Hate podcast, and we are here doing the State of the Libertarian Union Talk Show, episode 2. We are a little bit short on guys this time. We had to do a late Sunday night recording, but we have representatives from 3 different shows on. So again, it's me from Don't Waste Your Hate. We have Jeff here as well. We have Daniel and Robert from Actual Anarchy, and we are hoping Patrick from Liberty Weekly can get back on. He just dropped off. But anyway, I guess we'll start off by just talking about what's going on everybody's show. So let's turn it over to Daniel first. Daniel, how's everything going over at Actual Anarchy?
Well, we got big news on our end. We've been making a lot of updates and changes to the show with the new year. And the first main change I want to talk about is for Libertarian Union itself, and that is that we launched the new site. So now when you go to libertarianunion.com, it's a new landing page. There's a individual page for each of our shows, and then there's a kind of a catch-all that you can go and find even more shows that are all listed in a category on the Actual Anarchy site. We're also going to be posting these State of the Libertarian Union shows on that page as well. So the first one from New Year's is on there already. So that's the first kind of big thing. The next big thing is that Robert and I had been doing a lot of soul searching and determined that we enjoy doing the show and we enjoy the audience that we've grown and been able to interact with and all the guests that we've had on, but we felt like we were preaching to the choir, and part of that is that the name of the show, which we like, is a bit of a turnoff to people who don't know what anarchy in the voluntarist sense is. So, there's that meme, that anarchy ball meme, where there's the red ANCOM ball going around smashing stuff and claiming they're the real anarchists, and then another ball is like, you anarchists just all want to go and destroy stuff. And the anarchy ball says, oh, man, this is terrible. These jokes are terrible. It's like someone's going around smashing shit claiming that they're anarchists, giving us a bad name. So anyway, the point is, people think that anarchy is violence or disorder or chaos. And so if they don't know us and what the show is about or what voluntarist anarchist philosophy is, they're not going to turn our show on. They're not going to check it out. They're going to be turned off immediately. And Robert, you had an example of this at a Christmas party, right? Why don't you jump in and then we'll get into what our solution has been.
It actually wasn't at the Christmas party, but it was over the Christmas break. I went to go see a movie with a friend, and because I try and cram in as many friend opportunities when I go over there on the west side, because I only there like for a few weeks out of the year. And went and saw a movie, and we were on the way back, and I forget how the topic came up, but I mentioned that I think I probably just casually dropped that I had a podcast, and this took my friend by surprise, because this is a friend I've had for 20 years, and I guess it's just never come up. But, then the natural question is, well, what's it called? And I said, well, it's Actual Anarchy. And then my friend got really quiet and then proceeded to talk about how worried she was about, me and how people are going to think I'm crazy and how I'm violent and, I explained how it was a movie review show, and she just, and I think that's a typical response to the average person, because, ANCAPs are getting more well-known, and I think we're well-known with people who matter, in, who you really respect and whatnot, but there are a whole mass majority of normies who are potentially great people, but they just don't know the message. They don't know the philosophy. They're busy in life, and they've got other problems. And, it's a specialized field that we're in. And we don't catch a lot of headlines because we don't go around smashing Starbucks windows and turning over garbage cans and setting things on fire and things like that. So we don't capture the headlines, so we're pretty much just the silent minority. And so you gotta stealth bomb it. You gotta get out there and change your name, and hopefully people will stumble across you, enjoy what you say and how you say it, your personality. They get on board with that, and then you also happen to be saying some things that might challenge some beliefs, and that's an ideal situation in my view.
Yeah. So then, you can go ahead with the solution then, Daniel.
Yeah. So to that end, and also to accomplish another thing, which was to simplify the amount of work that goes into creating the show, is that we decided that we were going to continue on with the actual Anarchy show, but introduce some categories to increase the pace of it and make it a little bit more of a formula so that people can kind of expect and become used to something. But then we're also doing a secondary version of the show where we don't mention Anarchy, we don't reference the site specifically, but we call it The Last Nighters, and that's in homage to Rothbard, whose movie critic name was Mr. First Nighter. So now we have lastnighters.com. There's a YouTube channel for it. Robert's also got a website and a YouTube channel called Trubster, and so we're posting the audio show as YouTube without the first couple of minutes and without the last couple of minutes of the actual Anarchy show, where we say, hey, this is actualanarchy.com/whatever show, and we do a little mini intro right in the middle, or right after that part where we call ourselves the Last Nighters, and we just go do the show and post that one up. So now it is called The Last Nighters, and there's no Anarchy stank on it. There's no misunderstanding of what it's about. It's a movie film analysis review show. So we call it the normie friendly version, and we actually talk about it. And this is actually the coolest part. We talk about it to our actual Anarchy audience, like they're in the club now. Like, hey, here's what we're doing, guys. We're doing a version so that you can share it with your family or your friends who you don't want them to think that you're a crazy anarchist, but you want to expose them to some ideas. Now there's a shareable version. So that's what we're doing now. We've done 4 of those so far, and I think so far it's working fairly well. It's a little bit tougher to have guests on because with the new format we're trying to be quicker, trying to be faster, but so far so good. What's your take on it so far, Robert?
Well, I think, when we've done the few episodes where it's just you and me. I think our first was Get Out, and we really just tried to keep it short and try and have a unique take. Like the movie critique business, and it's sort of a business. It's kind of weird to say that, but it is a very crowded business. I mean, it's super saturated. There's 1,000,001 people on YouTube that are all trying to review movies. There are the traditional print media people who are still doing it. They've moved online, but they're still doing it. And then there's podcasters too, and bloggers. And there's just everybody under the sun that has an opinion on a movie will go ahead and do that. I think we have a unique take on it, but it's gone so well. For the most part, it really requires us to, keep a stopwatch handy and know where we're at time-wise, and Yeah, I mean, we still have a long ways to go. This is still something really new for us. I think we'll eventually get it down to where the point where we'll be able to have a pretty fun take on how you would think about a movie, how you would review it, and just be unique out in that whole sea of opinions. But yeah, pretty good, Daniel. What do you think?
I think so far so good, and so that's our updates to Libertarian Union site, some changes to our show, and then the introduction of the Last Nighters version of the show.
I thought you guys were going to say you were steering into the black bloc sort of publicity and going to go with actual Antifa.
No, not quite. So what's been going on with you guys? I know you just did an episode on Jordan Peterson, and it's been getting a little bit of traction on YouTube. Any other updates from your guys' end? Don't waste your hate.
Yeah, we did get a lot of hits on our most recent Jordan Peterson episode. For me, it's just been making me think like maybe we should do a lot more topical material, try to like hit the waves of whatever's kind of big in the news, and maybe at least do like a short episode on that every once in a while and see if we can drive some organic traffic that way. But as far as anything else new, we are we both got new webcams, so I think in the future you're going to be seeing some more video content from us. We haven't done anything yet, but that's definitely in the works, or at least in the gears are turning in our brain to get there. That's one thing. Another thing I've been entertaining is maybe just doing some very quick podcast episodes, like on a more frequent basis, because right now we're just basically doing one episode per week, kind of thinking about maybe throwing out like one or two extra little like 3 to 5 minute like rants, or just quick hit something real quick, whatever it might be, just to get some more content out there, but something easily digestible, and easily shareable too, because most of our conversations are, I would say, like a lot of your actual Anarchy conversations, the older ones, where they were kind of just more freeform, drawn out, and just kind of back and forth banter. So I think maybe trying to release some more like produced things with like maybe some kind of a, not necessarily a script, but with like a end point in mind, as opposed to just kind of some of these long conversations that we tend to have on Don't Waste Your Hate. So that's it on my end. Jeff, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're just sort of plodding along here. I think we, to not try not to repeat anything Tony just said. I mean, we are going to try to tap into the YouTube community a little more. Seems like people get a bit siloed on their, in their formats, and it seems like we could gain a lot more followers through there, and using the sort of the like search paradigm that dominates YouTube, whereas on podcasts it's more about like reputation and recommendations and word of mouth and things like that. So yeah, to the extent that we have anything insightful we think to say about anything topical or a particular issue, we may try doing little bits like that on YouTube. And then yeah, just kind of like what you guys were saying, actual Anarchy, that you're straddling this line, right, of having this unique perspective on particular topics, coming at it from a radical libertarian angle, at the same time trying to reach a broader audience, while not trying to freak them out, but also trying to retain the core people. So and then to add to the fun, you have people in your life personally that are sort of discovering what you're doing over time. I just had this experience last night, and I'm not sure about the fallout quite yet, but definitely along the lines of what Robert was talking about, where looks of concern, probably some follow-up conversations behind my back. So we'll see what happens, but just we're still new at this, but just trying to get better and find more topics to talk about, and also covering New Jersey more. So we have a new, I'm sure soon to be recognized as reprehensible governor. and his policies that he's trying, radical policies, progressive policies that he's trying to push through very, very quickly. So we'll be, trying to cover that in real time, in depth. But yeah, I think that basically covers for. Go ahead.
I was just going to jump in. I was wondering because I haven't checked out your latest episode, your Jordan Peterson episode. Did you cover the whole Kathy, whatever her name is?
Yeah, Kathy
thing,
Newman with Channel 4.
So it was pretty much entirely all about that interview?
Yeah, I mean, we talked, again, it was kind of rambly, and we had our frequent guest, my cousin Rob on, and, he's a big Peterson fan, and it meandered into, conversations, about Jordan Peterson and his moment in general, and then what's going on in academia and free speech and different things like that. But it was definitely centered around that interview.
And how long was your episode?
Too long.
Too long? Okay.
No, I think it was about 35, 40 minutes, something like that.
I think Tony edited it down.
Because I'm really curious about that, because there's a whole bunch of YouTube channels that kind of all kind of want to weigh in on these big kind of cultural events, and I, of course, we've got opinions, you've got opinions, we've all got opinions about this kind of stuff, but it seems like it's kind of a saturated market. But if you're seeing some really positive gains from it, it's tempting.
I mean, it's hard to say what kind of long-term gains we're going to get from that. We definitely got hits, but I do question the way YouTube counts views. I'm not sure if, just a page load counts as a view. So it's like, did this person watch 2 seconds of this thing and then turn it off, or did they watch, the whole thing? I'm not really sure. I was actually starting to look into that before, and I'm thinking some of it is calculated just by once the video starts playing, sorry. Once it starts playing, they count it as a play. So it could be probably like a minute of play, and that's it. So it's hard to tell how much genuine traffic you're getting, Well, I mean, you're getting people there, but how many are actually staying and listening, especially on our end, because we don't have any video right now. It's just like a screenshot of basically our logo. So, most people they get on YouTube, a lot of times they want to see something.
Yeah, I think, and just to add to that, you certainly don't want to just be adding to the saturation and not contributing to the conversation. So something we've been thinking a little more about is, do we really have something that we feel is, unique to bring? And I think to the extent that you can truncate your point, especially on YouTube, I think you can get more people to circulate it, your perspective or to click in. I consume a lot of YouTube because I work from home and I got the TV here, and I have it playing in the background very often. And, at a certain point, most days I'll switch over to YouTube, and it is its own community. And very often I'll get recommendations after watching another video on a topic. And it's somebody I've never heard of before, and I'll let it play for a little bit. And that's how I've discovered a lot of new content creators, some of which I've just full on subscribed, some of which I've just kept at the back of my mind. And if they did a really nice, thorough job of covering a topic that was unique, I think that it really has a tendency to stick.
Yeah, for sure. There's been a whole kind of brouhaha about the social justice side of Disney and Star Wars and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you'll see a channel with, 1,000 subscribers or a couple hundred subscribers, but then they got some, social justice warrior Star Wars Last Jedi title, and then they'll have, 100,000 views, and I'll watch it, and I'll go, well, he's just repeating everything else I've already heard from everybody else saying, and things I've thought myself. So why can't I do that? Maybe I should do that. I don't know. Or am I just piling on to something that doesn't need to be piled on? Or is it just that, you have this confirmation bias and you just want to hear more and more people saying the same opinion? Can we take advantage of that? Should we take advantage of that? I don't know.
I mean, I'm not sure. I think honestly, just the fact that our title was basically episode 26, Jordan Peterson. So what you're saying is, and a question mark. That's. I think it's just because it said Jordan Peterson, it just starts popping up. So, I mean, I think you can just get a lot of search things coming up just by picking the right title, honestly.
I will say though that as a podcast show titled "Don't Waste Your Hate," it probably behooves us to stick to content and things that we feel pretty passionately about, and we have something to say on the topic. But yeah, I think if you're really just fishing for count, YouTube's definitely a good place to do it, and you could definitely just pick some of these topics and, like you said, just sort of repeat mainstream views on whatever it is, and you probably do a decent job. And in a few instances, for whatever reason, it catches on with the algorithm. Yeah, you could see these really wild spikes up into a couple 100,000 for a person that's otherwise may have had 100 hits in her entire life, but the video itself is not all that substantial.
Yeah, and to this end, I think we have Pat on the line. Pat, are you? Is your audio working? All right, let's put that on pause for a minute, because I know he had a pretty big video recently with Kyle of Foreign Policy Focus. So hopefully we can get back to that. But anyway, Robert, I guess we'll go back to you. You were mentioning before we started recording about. I guess you were talking about some kind of incident you had at a party, right? Not incident, but
no. Before the show, we were talking. I've got this friend of mine. He's kind of like a friend of me. I've known him almost as long as I've known Daniel. But he's the kind of go-to guy who loves to argue. So I'll bring my libertarian philosophy, and he'll bring his state apologetics, and we'll kind of go at it back and forth on email or in person for just hours at a time. And it's never quite clear exactly what he really believes, or if he just loves to make those gears turn in his brain. But he sent me this story today that makes me feel kind of hopeful for him, because here we go. So he's flying back from his vacation, and he goes through customs in San Francisco, and he's waiting in line, and he's getting hungry, and he opens up this bag of beef jerky, and he starts eating it. And then he finally gets to the customs lady, and she says, "I need to take that." And he's like, "I just opened this. Why do you need to take it?" Well, she says, like, "Well, if it was sealed, you could keep it. But since it was open, it wasn't allowed, and then they needed to steal it from him." So here's what he says. "So I asked if I could have it back so that I could eat it. She said no. I said, 'So you're just going to steal it?' Bravo, my friend, who is starting to learn probably some of this kind of verbiage from myself. Her response was, 'We are not stealing it, and if you say that again, we can take you in.'" Let me repeat that.
Whoa.
The customs TSA or whatever customs person says, "We're not stealing this beef jerky, we're just taking it," which is the same thing. The cognitive dissonance mental gymnastics to go from "we're just going to take it" to not stealing. I don't know how you do this kind of backflip.
We're not stealing it, and by the way, we're throwing you in a cage or something and taking you away if you even insinuate that this might be stealing.
Yes. We're not stealing it, and if you say that again, because how dare you call it what it is, we can take you in. So they're claiming the power to throw you in a cage based on you accusing them of doing exactly what they're doing. So, I mean, this is like we're living in 1984, George Orwell. I mean, not even, this is wrong think. And anyway, so he responded, "Now you're threatening me? How is it not stealing when you take something without my permission and threaten me when I try to get it back?" Good job, bravo. Bravo, friend. She says, "I didn't threaten you." Really? You threatened to throw him in a cage for saying words, and then claims that she didn't threaten him. So then she calls over her supervisor Actually, he heard the escalating conversation and came over. I informed him that he needed to teach his employees the meaning of the words steal and threaten. Bravo! He then proceeded to relate the story to this other guy. Then again, he asks for his beef jerky. He said she made the decision and that the agent's discretion is the final decision. There's nothing he can do about it. All of a sudden, this agent has ultimate and total power. And as soon as they say something, they put their foot down. You cannot have your beef jerky back that we're stealing from you, but we're not stealing it from you. He says, I then asked if that meant she could take my hat at her discretion. He told me to stop being ridiculous, as she had no reason to take my hat. But she did have reason to steal the beef jerky. Because somehow, for some reason, there's a huge meat crisis in this country, and if there's people just running around with open bags of beef jerky, we're all doomed. Apparently, we're all going to start choking on meat or something. I don't know. So, good job. You're taking meat away from hungry people. Let's see here. I told him that she had no reason to take my beef jerky, so what's the difference? I then asked him who I could report this incident to. So he asks how or who he could report the incident to, and their response is, so now you're threatening us?
Oh, man.
Crazy.
Let's see. Sir, if you really want to make this difficult, we can help you with that. He gave an exasperating shook his head, and told him, I would tell you to go fuck off, but that would probably just arrest me. So have a nice day.
Bravo.
Bravo, friend. So, yeah, the cognitive dissonance at work in this little exchange with these just authoritarian overlord type jackboots is just indicative of, they have to control the situation. They are the authority. You are the slave. You will do as we say. We can take your beef jerky away, regardless of how you feel of it, or regardless of whether it makes any sense whatsoever. I mean, if they just started taking shoes or started taking underwear, just whatever. As long as it's their policy, they'll be totally fine with it. And these workers can just ex post facto justify it in their brain as long as they're getting the paycheck. They already molest people. They already put them through these, scanner machines where they see the outlines and all the details of your body. And they already steal stuff from you. And as long as government, authority says it's okay, they're okay with it too. It just blows me away.
Yeah, man. And, it's, I feel like it's like you don't start thinking in this way until you run up against the state in some fashion, until you run up against some dude with a gun who says he's been given the authority to make the rules and enforce them in this, in this moment.
So I'm curious, because so this sounds like one of those friends that is like a professional devil's advocate, and I have friends like this too, and they're fun to debate, but it can drive you nuts because it seems like they're not coming from a principled place and they're fine with it, or you can never really accomplish anything because they're just kind of talking to you in circles. But it sounds like this is the kind of person where if you were telling him this story and you were the one that this happened to, that he would be making some sort of defense of the agent. Did he change his position, or is that not the right characteristic?
Yeah, it might be like one of those guys who's kind of like, well, if you got nothing to hide, then you shouldn't worry about it. Then let them search whatever they want.
I heard that today. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, it's unfortunate we keep hearing these defenses and these mental gymnastics. It's really disgusting. I think I'm getting through to him. If what he actually says here is true, 99% of Americans would kind of grumble about it, but then hand over the beef jerky and not, put up a stink, not put up any kind of a fuss, just be like, ugh, whatever, I guess. The funny thing is that not only did they steal his beef jerky, but they stole his kid's beef jerky, his 8-year-old kid's beef jerky. But then his wife's beef jerky was fine. They let her go through.
The only thing missing from that story is her taking like a big bite of it, like right in front of him.
Right? Yeah. I'm going to take it from you, and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick, are you there now or what?
Yeah, I should be if you can hear me.
Yes, there he is. All right, people, we got the third podcaster on here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
All right, so let's quickly go back and just talk about. We were talking about some of our YouTube video that got a decent amount of hits recently, and I know you had one that had a pretty good amount of hits as well. I think it was the one you did with Kyle of Foreign Policy Focus, right?
Yeah, we did one on the Turkish invasion of northern Syria to attack the Syrian Kurds, and it was a really good response, I think, because Kyle hasn't appeared on camera before for his audience, and I think because we did a screen share, and he was able to illustrate on the map exactly where these places are, and I think that visual component really helped. And I'm just looking at it now. It has 108 views, so it's not a blockbuster, but it's pretty good, and Kyle said he got a lot of good feedback, so we were pretty happy with that.
Nice. And any new plans for the show? I know you've kind of gotten more into the video. You mentioned that last month that was kind of your new focus. How's that been going?
Yeah, real good. It's a lot more work, but I think it has the ability to reach a wider audience. And I've really had a lot of fun with it. I've done like live hangouts with Keith Knight, who is someone who his Twitter handle is _capitalist, I think, but he does a lot. He just had a really awesome interview about false flag attacks with an author that I wasn't aware of before. But just like you guys said, just kind of trucking along, plodding along. It's been a lot of fun. What I really want to do is start inviting really bigger names on the show. I know I was emailing with a big figure. I was going to ask Brian McClanahan if he wanted to come on, and some other minds that I've been planning on. So looking forward to that. It should be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that it will, grow audience and get a little more exposure for, all the stuff that we're doing. Should be good.
Nice. So speaking of that, I know you recently talked to Mance Raider. I knew you had him on your podcast a while back, but you just had him on again, and you were on his show too, right?
Yeah. So it was my first time being interviewed, and it was like a lot of fun. It's kind of weird because the whole time when people are just asking you questions like about what you're doing, it feels a little weird, but I really like it. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't want people to watch it, so.
Yeah, I think I would feel weird with that. I'd probably be like thinking I was listening to some other podcast, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, now I have to answer.
Yeah, so it's I really like it. Like I said, I'm looking forward to making more content. I'd like to just make some more documentaries and stuff, but I've been trying to learn about foreign policy. That's another kind of angle that I've taken lately, what with Kyle and stuff. But I got Fool's Errand. I'm going to give that a read and try and figure out what's going on.
But it's this week.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. The your guys' episode on Israel, I thought when you had Kyle on, was so well. Like, you guys knew your stuff, you had everything researched, and then you put the clips in, and yeah, it was awesome. I listened to it on my road trip. It was real good. Yeah.
Kyle is, he's great. He really knows his stuff, and I'm going to check out the episode you just did with him. And that sounds great, actually, because it's so complicated, and it's really daunting to try to just jump in to the Middle East when you don't have the background. Like, I feel like you have to have like a decade of tracking it in real time while catching up on the history to even have an intelligent conversation. But having the visual of the map while you're talking and him sort of illustrating, I think that would be really helpful. That sounds like a great idea.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. And so the first time I had Kyle on, he was just such a wealth of information, and I just couldn't keep up with it, because like when you don't know the terms, it's so hard to pay attention. And Trey's always kind of talked about, like, when he talks to people, his eyes, he sees their eyes glaze over because they're just not engaging with it. And I get that, it's like you're sitting there and you're like, wait a second, who are the Kurds? And like, what's the difference between, the Syrian Kurds and the Kurds in Turkey, and what's Kurdistan? Like, that's not politically defined on the map. You don't learn that. And so just learning all that stuff is humbled me, and it's been like, damn, the more you learn, the more you know that there's stuff you don't know. Like, you come to find that out. It just gets so much more complex.
Yeah, and Scott Horton, I think, described it one way where he said, look, I have to know and understand the intricacies of like the fake narratives to unwind those before I can even get to so I gotta do the whole weapons of mass destruction like argument and deconstruct it before I can get to the actual reasons. And that's the whole deal with especially U.S. like foreign policy, right? There's all the layers of politics, before you get to like anything like that's actually happening on the ground, and then that's complicated enough. So.
Oh yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's fun, and I got to get back to law and stuff too, but I just want to let my mind wander to each topic, because the thing with law is that I'm doing it all the time at school. I don't want to think about law when I get home so much, but I'm looking forward to, because this is my last semester, I just want to get out into the professional sphere and learn what it's really like what it's really like in the trenches. And I think once I get that real world experience, there won't be any substitute for it. It'll just enhance my content that much more, I think, if I have the time, which I hope too. But
yeah, I imagine once you get into that role, you'll have a lot of just natural material to go off of. What do you plan on doing when you get out?
Well, what I'd like to do is, I've been saying lately, I guess in the last few weeks, that I'd like to work with the Libertas Institute in Utah, or at the Mises Institute. That's just, I sent my resume out to Jeff Dice with the email inviting him on the show. I don't think he'll watch this, but I'm just, I was like, well, if I don't send it, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But it's kind of like, I feel like I'll get stuck once, because what I'm going to do probably is go and work in a private firm somewhere. And I feel like once I start that, I might be nailed down, because we're planning to start a family here in the next few years and stuff. So that's just the natural progression. So I'll always have this platform though. And I'm hoping I'll be able to keep working with it.
Nice. Hey, Daniel, you back on or what?
I am, yeah. I had technical difficulties on top of the difficulty of recalling that meme, so I found the meme and posted it up. And the gist of it is, Anarchy Ball says, America, what do you think of when you hear the word anarchist? And America Ball says, violent shithead. So then Anarchy Ball refers back to the Ancon Ball and says, so someone has been acting like a violent shithead while calling himself an anarchist. Who could that be?
Yep.
And that, of course, is, what has tainted that word so strongly, and why we made our update to the show. Though we still like actual anarchy, because we envisioned that name being clarifying what anarchy is. But if you can't even get people past that word to even listen to you, that's the problem we're trying to solve with this latest update.
The word is a tough sell, but I think it's good that you got a guy like Michael Malice out there who's just unabashedly calling himself an anarchist on Fox News. I mean, so it maybe the way is getting paved little by little, but I think you're making a good move by trying to reach out to kind of people who might not be as friendly to that word. I was having a conversation. It was like a family gathering. Birthday, having a conversation with some liberal people in my family, and they always kind of try to corner me because they know I have these radical views, right? And they always try to corner me, and I was telling them about, oh, well, what's this all about? What do you really believe? Blah blah blah. And I was like, well, most of us believe, the government is a problem, the biggest problem there is. And I said, and even some of us even believe you don't need a government at all. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, some of us really believe that people can live voluntarily and arrange themselves accordingly without having anyone tell them how to do it, And they were like, they couldn't handle it. So it's not for everybody, especially at the first shot. So I think what you're doing is good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're certainly hoping for some traction, and you're exactly right. When people do get confronted with that idea of no government, they feel like there'd be this power vacuum and it's going to turn into Somalia. But what they don't understand is that violence is costly, and it's a lot more beneficial to work together in a market-based economy. To provide value to others and have your needs satisfied by others on a voluntary basis. There's no need to initiate violence or have intellectual or political cover with which to do so with impunity, which is essentially what we have now, and that's why we have so much violence on the scale that we do when you include wars and democide. I think Rummel at the University of Hawaii calculated that 262 million people were murdered by their own governments in the 20th century, and then if you add in the number of war dead, including civilians, it's another 123 million people, and that's something like 3 or 4% of all the people who lived at any point in the 20th century alone. I mean, if you had anything else out there killing, 3 to 5% of people, just innocent people, I think it would be pulled off the shelves, banned, whatever, immediately or pretty quickly, And yet this thing gets a pass. Democracy is deified, and even though most places aren't a democracy anyway, that they just use the name. But even if you had truly representative government, like we allegedly have in a Republican style, you have people giving campaign promises and then immediately going against those campaign promises as soon as they have power, and then you don't get to vote on them again for 4 years. What kind of choice is that? And what about all the people who don't vote or who vote for the other guy? These people are getting these positions of power with something like, 15, 20% of a population voting out of the entire population that they are subjecting to their rule. That doesn't seem like a very fair system to me. I don't know. What do you think, Robert?
I think it's totally fair. I think you're a whiner, and you need to suck it up.
Mic drop.
No, it's the tyranny of the majority. I mean,
well, it's not even the majority.
Because you're outnumbered doesn't mean...
It is a minority.
Right. It's the tyranny of the majority of the voters, I suppose. But yeah, you're right. It is. It's something like 15% of the population, something like that, votes in a president. You can imagine how much fewer vote in your governors and mayors and local peoples. It is a tiny percent of people who are violently imposing their will upon the others, which is why I like to say that 99% of your life is lived in anarchy. I mean, you're like adults. We make our choices and we live our lives. We decide who we're going to be friends with, who we're going to marry, who we're going to associate with. But then every once in a while, people think that you got to have somebody at the wheel, and they don't understand spontaneous order. They don't understand the lack of, just the impossibility of central planning and how inefficient and disgusting and immoral it is.
Yeah, the cognitive dissonance on this is ridiculous. I just wanted I had a Twitter thing that I saw, and I made a response, and literally nobody saw my response. Richard Dawkins, this is his tweet. It says, quote, "I want to give my life for Islam," close quote. "This boy is 15. He says his elder brother has already been martyred, and his parents are happy that he's to become a suicide bomber. Could anything other than religion inspire such madness?" And this is this cognitive dissonance that, that's the end of it right there. This is the cognitive dissonance that, I don't know how much of the population faces when because when it comes to the government, when it comes to the state, like they don't see that as, my response was essentially like, how about statism? Like, how many people have martyred themselves by putting on a military uniform for their government? Probably a lot more than religion, or at least a comparable amount. I mean, so you get this cognitive dissonance all the time, and from like some of the smartest, quote unquote, smartest people in the world.
Well, look at I'm gonna pull out the first chapter of Fool's Errand. I was reading it this afternoon by Scott Horton, and just to go off that point, he makes right in the beginning, he's talking about how this terrorism isn't explicitly Muslim or Islam. He's saying how a lot of the terrorists actually weren't very devout, and they visited prostitutes, and they were drinking and doing drugs. And I think it was MI5, the British intelligence agency, did a study on this and found that almost all of the terrorists they were dealing with, actually, the Islamic terrorists actually weren't very devout Muslims. Yeah, so it's not necessarily the religion, because he was saying that what Osama bin Laden did was it wasn't a religious thing. He framed political aims and political goals and wrapped it in religion. I mean, just look at what George W. Bush did when, after September 11th, he invoked the images of God and saying that we're on the side of righteousness. He did the same damn thing that the Islamic terrorists are doing. So I'm so glad that I got the book, man. Now I can sound like I know what I'm talking about, but it's really great. It's just kind of eye-opening, and Scott Horton just lays it out so well. It's like when you get the book, you just know it's important. There's like 5 pages in the beginning that's all like stellar glowing reviews from super important people from across the board. And it just feels like this is the book of a moment, like this is an important piece in the movement going forward. It's just great.
Pat, did you take the Renegade University course that Scott recently led? And I want to say that was the first course taught by someone other than Thad Russell at Renegade University, which in and of itself is a great initiative that he's taking with that university. But was that you that was enrolled in that?
No, it was Kyle.
It was Kyle?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear. I'm sure it was fantastic, but
I'm sure. I didn't know if there was one session. I heard there was another one like today or yesterday or something. I don't know if they're the same session or if they're like in sequence. But yeah, I'd need to. I'm too poor right now. But yeah.
But I think something that you guys are missing in this conversation, because I want to bring, have some critical like analysis of what you're saying, is like, who's gonna build the roads, man? What about the roads?
Fuck, I didn't think about that, dude. Are you serious? What would we do? Well, I saw this meme the other day that said, you don't need a road when you have a tank, because the tank carries the road with it. So, if everybody has a tank, we'll be all good.
Malice's answer to this is, what about the stairs?
Yeah, there you go.
Damn.
Yeah, what about the shoes? What about the groceries?
Well,
yeah, government doesn't mandate all those things.
Right.
What was the Tom Woods argument that there's going to be a Walmart on one side and then there's going to be like a Safeway on the other, and people are just going to stand in between the two and like scratch their heads?
Yeah. Well, how are we going to get there?
What a pathetic, just a total indictment of like humanity to say, yo, if the government doesn't do this, and they don't do it anyway, they just finance it, but if the government doesn't, quote, do this, then we're not going to have roads. Human beings won't figure out, without guns pointed at each other, how to construct roads. So there. All right,
You guys seen that Office Space meme on that?
Yeah, that's a good one. That is.
Yeah. So do you actually pay for the roads? Well, no, the taxpayers do that. Well, do you actually build the roads? Well, no, the road companies do that. Well, what would you say you do here? I'm a people person. God damn it.
Nice. Oh wow, that's perfect.
That is
Or
perfect.
they're-
Taxpayers don't know how to talk to road builders somehow. I facilitate. Yeah, it's funny because these are adults that are making these arguments. It's a real indictment of themselves as well. Like I have no idea how I could possibly make a flat space between two locations. It's impossible.
Well, and
Did
I've
you-
I've
And
heard
aren't
someone.
government roads garbage anyway? I mean, aren't people complaining about infrastructure falling apart, bridges falling down, and potholes and terrible road conditions? I mean,
They're really bad in the cities. Sorry.
yeah. So, like, why are they praising these terribly run roads?
Yeah.
Because I forget who said it now. One of the main guys that I follow, but it was a while ago. But it always stuck with me, which is when government takes over things for like a long enough period of time, the people tend to like lose their imagination for how it would ever be done absent like their role. And it's really true. And I'll acknowledge it's hard to like conceive of like the entire like creative like ability and imagination of the market. It's like almost an impossible thing to do. Just look at the remarkable things that exist today, and if they didn't exist, would you be able to even imagine something like this that we take for granted, like Wikipedia? It seems totally insane to me, yet there it is. So I kind of get it, but I think they fall into that trap, and
Yeah, people get fat and lazy physically and mentally. That's
Yeah.
basically it.
They get institutionalized.
Yep.
that's right. This is funny.
Indoor cats, like Mance Raider would say. He stole that from someone else.
That's Owen Benjamin says that all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
like an OB saying.
indoor
It's
cats.
true.
This is like the other meme from Office Space with Jennifer Aniston, and he's in the car, and she's saying, "So you take their money?" And he says, "Yes." And she says, "And it's not yours." And he says, "It becomes ours." And then she says,
Well, it
"How is
becomes
that
ours.
not stealing?"
Yeah,
I
it
don't
sounds
think I'm
like
explaining it correctly.
You could definitely make a meme out of that one. Has that been made into a meme?
Yeah,
Oh, it has. Okay.
yeah.
I think that
It
was-
becomes ours.
Yeah.
And if you call it stealing again, we're going to put you behind bars.
Yeah.
So
Are you threatening us? Sorry.
so since we're just kind of like spitballing here, yeah, I've been on a like just on fire this week just from one like horrific fucking police like story after another, unnecessary shooting, just because it really is true. We joke, but it's really, really appalling to see how willing people are to create new laws, really, really frivolous laws. And I think what people need to understand is that almost all of these laws are being enforced by police officers with guns on their hips, with a it seems like every year less and less ability and know-how and willingness to like de-escalate a situation without killing the other person, even as something as a simple traffic stop. So, you have government roads, and that means you have police officers, apparently necessarily, manning them and enforcing the rules. You don't have them in other areas where, society doesn't come apart at the seams. And if you do something wrong, there's an understanding that, there's going to be some sort of repercussion. It's only on like roads, for example, where it's accepted that officers can pull you over. They've got a gun. If you reach for something a little too quickly, if you talk back with an attitude and then you resist them doing something they shouldn't do, there's a very real possibility that your night is not going to end very well, and that you can be shot. And it's just story after story coming out about this. And one recent local thing that came up this week is there's a town in North Jersey, and they're exceptionally progressive, and they're the only municipality in the state to propose something like this. But it's actually under consideration right now, where they want to make it illegal to text and walk around town. To text and walk. So this means that the police officers will be able to stop the people walking around with their phones, looking down. If you're standing and beginning to walk and you're looking down at your phone, they can give you out tickets you pay hundreds of dollars for. And it's just another example where they're they're pitting the police officers, these armed guards, against the populace. And it's disheartening not to see like total outrage that when stories like that pop up.
I don't know how are they going to enforce that? I just don't.
Like jaywalking, I presume. I mean, they're just going to have, cops on bikes, cops on, walking around, cops on fucking, what's
Segway?
Segways, yeah, thank you.
Is this like
are people?
Sorry, go ahead, Robert.
Are the same people that propose these laws the same people that get upset about cop murdering people?
Well,
because it is.
They're Democrats. They're always Democrats.
Yeah, you're just creating reasons and excuses for the cops to interact with the people, and that just leads to murder. I mean, there's no law so petty that the cops won't murder you over it. These people are such cowards. They'll break into your house and then shoot your dog. And if they miss the dog and then they shoot you, then it's like, oh, accidentally. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll lose my job about it.
Probably not. They probably won't lose their
Probably
jobs.
not.
And shooting your dog is the first thing that they're going to do.
Yeah, that's their go-to move. It could be like a little Pomeranian and they'll blow its head off.
It's always there was a famous case years ago where like they I want to say it was actually one of these like swatting cases. One way or another, the SWAT team ended up at the mayor's house. They weren't supposed to be there. They busted in the door and they immediately killed the two dogs. And he, freaked the fuck out, obviously. But because he was a mayor, it was a bigger story. They do that to, your local schmuck, and people are outraged or, oh, that's not right. But, you just sort of have to deal with it. And they have all this cover for themselves and nothing ever, there's certainly no justice. Just this week, there was a story in Columbus, Ohio, where it was in a juvenile court. And I don't know what happened. There's different accounts, but by just about every account I saw, the 16-year-old, who seems like he pretty clearly has some mental issues, he got in some sort of altercation with the officer in the court, and who I believe at this point was like restraining his mother physically, and he started, trying to pull the officer off of him. Regardless, 16-year-old kid, unarmed, turns around and fires his weapon into his stomach in front of his family, in front of everybody, and kills him. And that there's not going to be the police union comes out and they said that he was in a fight for his life. It's under investigation. Apparently there's video, and I'm praying that it comes out, because that seems to be the kind of thing that actually sparks outrage around the country. Otherwise, I think this will probably just fade away. But you see these stories. I mean, just go looking for it for 10 minutes and you'll be horrified by what you find.
Well, of course, you had that Mesa, Arizona thing that happened, and that was only, a month ago or so. We had like a really nice episode queued up, and then we had like a unfortunate technical malfunction, and we lost the episode. But that was a crazy thing with the hallway. You guys all saw that, I imagine, right?
I couldn't watch
the
it.
execution.
I couldn't watch it, but I know what happened.
It was disturbing, man. It was
brutal.
Disturbing.
Totally brutal.
It makes like the hair on your, skin raise up. Like it's insane. And it could be anybody. I mean, that dude, like, by all accounts, it seems like he was just like with some chick in a hotel room, So, I mean,
yeah, I believe that was his wife. And there was a report about maybe a gun seen through a window.
Yeah.
But it's not illegal to have a gun in Arizona. I'm sorry. It's not. Now, sure, they could go check it out maybe, but yeah, to get him crawling on the ground and then barking all kinds of different orders at him and then just murdering him when he goes to pull his pants up is... What kind of cowards are these cops? I mean, I keep coming back to the idea that they're cowards, and their training absolutely creates it like an us versus them mentality where they have to dominate people. So they're always the one in charge, and if anybody kind of challenges them on that, they have to like alpha up and threaten them with murder in order to get them to back down, because you're dealing with like a subjugated population. And that's but what kind of cowards are they when they're wearing like body armor and like SWAT gear and like they got AR-15s and you got this blubbering guy who's like begging for his life, and you just murder him. That kind of stuff. I can't watch these cop videos anymore. I used to be able to and just get outraged about them, but I already know they're bad, and it's just right now I just feel like I'm traumatized because they just keep going, they just keep happening, and you're right. I mean, every time there's a new law made, that's another excuse for another altercation to occur, where another cop is going to exert some bullshit authority over somebody by sticking a gun in their face, and then somebody like blinks or doesn't exactly follow the jackboot orders perfectly, doesn't lick the boots quite like they like them licked, and then they're dead. And I don't know how much more people can put up with it. It's
motion to the hip. Motion to your hip is not the move when a cop is in your presence. That's what I've learned. But this Miss Arizona thing, I agree. It was really rough to watch. I watched it knowing I was going to be disturbed, but I felt as though, and there'll be a limit to how much of this I can do, but I do want to remind myself in like a visceral way of like, because this was not some like extraordinary circumstance. This was, they just called the local police because something was up. They showed up, and this guy's dead. And you can watch the video of the entire interaction, and it's totally insane. And the guy got off. The cop got off. And so that's part. And it wasn't until the video was leaked that there was really the outrage and the attention. But I want to be reminded for myself. I got almost pulled over the other night, and like you playing these scenarios in your head, and you don't want to be too panicky, but really understand the gravity of the situation. Every time you're interacting with a cop, that's a very possible outcome if you don't do everything. If you get a guy in a bad mood, they're protected by the system. They're not your friends, and you know both sides are guilty, but it's usually the lefties that are in this area, the bigger authoritarians, I find, and those are the ones that are pushing these kinds of the increasing of the laws around. You
guys
here.
Heard about the new law? The new law in California about straws?
I did.
Yes.
I did not. Please explain.
Well, before we go to straws, hang on. Just before we go to straws, I just want to mention that the real sick part is that the cops are always, when they're tried in these cases, they're always tried according to what they did versus what their training was.
Yeah.
It's never on any kind of objective basis, like, did you aggress against so-and-so? Did you violate their rights? Blah, blah, blah. That's never, like, brought up. It may be brought up by the defense, the prosecution. But with the end of the day, they bring on these, like, expert witnesses, and they talk about, well, they followed their training perfectly, so you have to find them innocent. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, and real quick before the straws as well. I mean, I've talked to a lot of cops, and I remember my wife's friend was dating a cop, and his whole thing was just, we went camping one time, and his whole attitude was just like, we just got to keep people in line. Like, that's what they think they're doing. Like, we just, if you do something wrong, I'm here to keep you in line, man. That's what I'm doing. And they don't look at you and me and any regular citizen as on the same level of importance as them. The cop's life means more to them. It's literally like you're a second-class citizen compared to them. So, I mean, you just see what happens when a cop gets killed. You just see the reactions. Like, it's insane how crazy the police get when one of their own dies. It's a totally different ballgame once that happens, and it makes it very obvious how they view us versus how they view the people in the same uniform as them.
Well, and the police dogs too. I saw a meme the other day. They'll come into someone's house and waste 4 dogs with like just pew pew right away. But you kill one of their dogs, and they have like a whole funeral procession with like cars and people saluting and
fucking
stuff
bagpipes.
Like that. Yeah, for a freaking dog. I mean, I like dogs, but they'll just waste them.
Well, yeah, Patrick, as long as your dogs aren't doing anything wrong, they have nothing to worry about, right?
Yeah.
Well, they weren't dogs, they were pigs.
They were pigs.
All right, so what were you saying about the straw law, though?
Apparently, if a waiter or waitress or a waiter, I don't know how to say it in California speak without offending someone, but apparently if you are offered by waitstaff a straw in California, I don't know if this law actually happened yet or not, that waiter or waitress can be fined up to $1,000 and imprisoned for offering a plastic straw to you as a customer of a restaurant.
What?
Just for offering.
But we
I
use
really
like
can't wait
1.5
till they
million straws a
succeed.
day.
Well, they're doing their part to save the world, dude. Don't you get it?
Bless them. Bless their hearts.
God's work.
Hey, we're just talking about ridiculous laws. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of them, and they are crazy laws.
But Jeff, you're right, and you brought up Thaddeus Russell before, and he always points out that it's the Democrats and the progressives that are the ones pushing these fucking laws all the time. It's always the progressives who push these laws, and even when you talk about like a lot of the heavy-handed laws that like disproportionately affect like the black community, all of that came from progressives and progressive people in the black community themselves who said, we want these laws, like, and then they turn around and then they get screwed by them.
They think that government is there to fix social ills if you're being generous in your interpretation of their motives. And yeah, I mean, there's your problem right there. So more laws, and laws are what they are. I mean, it's prohibiting behavior that humans are going to engage in, and the more of it that you have, and it's being enforced by what are increasingly armed fucking thugs. So yeah, I'm very grumpy about this right now. So two other quick things, just because they're popping in my head, and this is somewhat cathartic. So there was the straw one the week before. It was in Seattle with the new like the sugar tax, right? And so
Yep.
I want to say it's in the signs I saw, like Costco. I want to say that they were kind of brave for doing this. I don't know the full backstory, but they were actually showing, like, for a case of soda, what they were charging, and then what the new tax was, and then what your new cost was, and it was like a 50% increase, based on the sugar content. And it's the kind of thing where there's outrage in the beginning, and then it goes away, and it just becomes Seattle's problem. And granted, it's a local thing, so you can move outside of Seattle if you want to get rid of that. But the whole mentality is just mind-blowing. And yeah, it's like a progressive policy that builds on itself, because, well, if we're going to have universal XYZ, then we now need to be able to try to manage your behavior, because how else are we going to keep a lid on, say, healthcare costs? So we get to decide now, at the point of a gun, what food you can eat, where you can go, dictate your behavior, and it's justified because these other wrong-headed policies and laws and institutions that we have in place require us to do so. So it just snowballs.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm surprised that these things are really happening in not surprised that they're happening in places like Seattle, but yeah, you would think that. And just how bad is it going to be when we have some sort of universal health care? I'm surprised they don't have these sort of things, happening in like in Great Britain or Canada or like Cuba. I mean, it sounds like something that some sort of crazy lefty would be like, yeah, we need to start regulating everybody's behavior. We can't have people smoking or eating saturated fat or salt or sugar or whatever the trendy new thing it is in the food industry to be afraid of.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. The goddamn food industry is such a fucking mess. I mean, it's really cleared itself up now in a big way since like the advent of the internet and blogs and people not taking the government's advice. But how much has the government fucked up on food? Just food recommendations.
The food pyramid's gone now, and no mea culpa, right? I didn't hear them say, "Hey, by the way, yeah, we killed a lot of people." Probably. Sorry, whoops. No, we got it right now though. So if you don't follow this new one, you're going to jail.
I've actually heard that argument probably 20 years ago related to emergency room care. So people were saying, well, we need to regulate your behavior regarding doing risky things or having insurance in your car, because if you don't have that insurance or you do that risky thing, then it's on everyone else to pay for your emergency room visit. So I can just see the health issue being a natural extension of that very argument.
Yes, that's exactly the
insanity of
justification.
collectivism.
Yeah.
People want it. They think it's the most compassionate thing. I can't think of a more crazy excuse to try and run other people's lives. But people do it all the time, and they think it's great.
You know what's also interesting is that the people pushing these laws think that people need to be controlled, right? Yet, so they have a low opinion of people, right?
Yeah,
yet they wouldn't want anyone controlling them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like what I mentioned before. It's like the moment that the best time for you to be able to convince someone of like a libertarian viewpoint is that moment when they brush up against the state unwanted, you know, when somehow like they put a lawn sign on their yard and they get a fine for it, or, you know, they park too many cars in their driveway, or whatever stupid thing might happen. Like that's the best times to get someone, or God forbid they have some kind of altercation with a police officer. That's the worst. But those are the instances when people start to you can open their eyes a little bit, you know. And
then also, like, if you ever had to go through like some sort of court proceeding where they had it out for you, I mean, you are just fucked. I saw another, like, these, I'm just remembering these like throughout the week. There's another one where and forgive me, I don't have all the details, but the gist of it is, guy gets busted selling weed. He wants to, I guess it's the Sixth Amendment, right to a speedy trial, among other things. And so he wouldn't take the plea deal. And 3 different times they brought in doctors to test his sanity. And they said outright, and were quoted saying repeatedly, including the judge, that we felt that he was not mentally fit because he would not take the plea deal, and would rather go to trial. And then they, you know, the article included some statistics, and the one that was really shocking, and I think once you think this through, you can understand why it is this way. 97% of, you know, all charges that are brought end up not going to court. They end up going to, you know, they end up taking the plea deal, and it's because they have all the leverage, and it's because they're going to try to fuck you as hard as they can if you don't take that deal. And yeah, you end up on lists. You got to go to jail for a couple of years. You got to deal with Nazis and everything. You know, that lovely world, and you're never the same. And but again, if you never have to interact with that, if you never have to be in that situation where you feel like there's true injustice, I think people have this idea in the back of their head that if they're truly right, you know, they can go to the press, or somebody will along the line will discover what's going on and put an end to it and come to your rescue. The truth is, we imprison more people in this country than any other country per capita in the world. And as far as it being a racial thing, just as an aside, I heard a stat the other day that if you were to remove every black and brown person from our jails today, we would still be approximately 5th or 6th in the world in terms of per capita incarceration. It's off the charts. If we're that great of a country, why do we, you know, have such an oppressive prison system? So it's just a huge, overwhelming apparatus, and I really wish people would wake the fuck up about it.
Yeah, you know, the whole summer that I was clerking for a judge around here in a mid-sized town, the whole county, there were 3 judges. Guess how many trials we had over the summer, the entire summer? Guess.
3.
Goose egg, buddy.
3.
Oh.
2 or 3. But, I mean, the whole summer, it was, yeah. And, I mean, just my experience is in the public defender's office, man, they leverage the hell out of you. There was one guy that I was helping who had, he had a noise complaint, and there were 2 misdemeanors. There were 2 misdemeanor noise complaints, and because the police had to show up or whatever, and it was a misdemeanor. I think each one had like a $300 fine. No, it was over $100. something like that. But they said, you take this deal now, or else when you come back, the deal was to drop one and keep one. And they said, you take this deal now, or else when you come back, we'll slap a disorderly on it. So it's like, what kind of choice is that? And then I think it's just funny that they claimed him mentally unstable, because in the professional ethics rules that govern all attorneys, you have to do what the client says. You have to. And if you think that it's a terrible path to make and that it's terrible for their case, or you think it's wrong morally, you have to stop being their attorney and they have to get another attorney, because it's always what the client says.
But this was the prosecution that did this.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think it's the difference between the private and the public sphere. In private representation, if we have agency, I can't do anything without your permission. You got to be on board with it. But if it's the state, then they can do whatever the fuck they want, because they're the state.
Including lie, by the way.
Yeah. So I saw that story. I didn't read it. Yeah, they have no competition.
Yeah, so Patrick, this whole conversation reminds me of some of our favorite, not quite libertarian, but fellow traveler type utilitarians who are okay with limiting the government except for the monopoly justice system. And they think that is a requirement to have a justice system. But as we've discussed, having such a system like that is fraught with total disasters, murders, 97% of things not even going to trial, like you just said, Jeff. I mean, what's so great about the current system that these people are clinging onto? And they seem to be pretty intelligent people trying to make arguments, and they're like, oh, no, we can't have competitive systems. We can't introduce a market into something like this. It's too important.
I don't know what they think. They're just like, well, that's the way it is. That's the way it's always been. That's the way I've always known it. So there's no outside-the-box thinking. What I think is ironic, though, is that the entire Western legal system generated from something that was voluntary, or it didn't have a monopoly system. If you could pledge to whatever warlord you wanted in Anglo-Saxon England, where this whole fucking system developed. It gradually got more statist, but I mean, when it first started out, it was actually, I was talking to Manson, it was the introduction of attorneys to the law that actually complicated the law more so, because you get this attorney class, and in some ways they're just parasites, and their incentive is to make the legal system more inefficient, and that's kind of the way it develops.
You're getting paid by the hour there, bud, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
They got their own language. They got their own language that only they can interpret now.
Yeah, legalese. So it's because there are a lot of really smart, intelligent people in the system. I mean, some of the most intelligent and smart people, but they just don't. They know what the problem is, or they can feel what the problem is. They just aren't identifying the right culprit. Like, don't waste your hate. And it's, some of them know that the war on drugs is a farce, but they're just like, well, I'm bound by popular sovereignty, I'm bound by the legislature, I took an oath, Yeah,
and this is where we can shift our from beating up the left for wanting more of these laws to beating up on the right for basically being rah bootlicker types. I mean, they're big proponents of having a strong military and police presence to try to, I don't know, like when Robert and I were growing up, it was always, we viewed that it was the right trying to impose their morality on others via the state and laws and enforcement. And now it seems to have flipped a bit. Now it's like the left being more totalitarian, but you still have a very strong contingent on the right that is very much into authority and power and the illusion of order, right? Trying to force it top down upon people. And so I didn't want to just let them off the hook either, because they're statists too. Maybe a little bit better rhetoric, maybe trending towards minarchist, but I find minarchists actually more infuriating, because at least they see some of the problems, right?
Traitors.
Yeah, at
it's
least
funny
they.
because government's job is to literally create crime. I mean, that is their entire reason of existence, is to make things illegal and therefore create crime, which is really fucking stupid. You would think that you would want less crime, but no.
Yeah, not to prevent crime. It's not a preventative model.
No, it's a creation of crime.
Yeah, and if just to lob one over, like you said, Dan, to the right to keep it even. I mean, I don't know. I think there's big time proponents on both sides, but my view has always been that the right is probably the bigger impediment to eliminating the war on drugs. And that's right up there with the all-time hits for most destructive social policies, and that extends well beyond our borders, by the way. So, and there's a hell of a lot of crime and misery associated with that, and business if you're into private prisons and the court systems and the increasing of mandatory minimums, and so much of it is tied back to the drug war, which I mean, I think a lot of them will defend it on this like moralizing, these moralizing grounds, obviously without ever really addressing the contradictions and why we got rid of alcohol prohibition and things like that. But
yeah, Jeff, can I interject for 1 second? You said private prisons. I'm wondering if we should maybe not use that term because it connotes that it's
fair,
a voluntary thing. I'd maybe call it crony prisons or something like that.
Yeah, true. Private prison has although I've heard good arguments for eliminating prisons altogether in some sort of like ANCAP society, and that wouldn't be the way of dealing with a lot of people. I don't know. But correct. Yeah. The quote, when people say private prisons, is even I'm obviously in the habit of doing, what is really meant there is that it's the private public quote partnership, the partnership against the people, where they're able to benefit, profit hugely from, lobby for laws that enrich themselves. Definitely not a voluntary exchange going on there.
Yeah, in the American colonies before the Revolutionary War, you could have someone like indentured servitude you, or you'd have them for a while till they paid off their debt. It wasn't. I think they could go home, but that's what they would do. But these judges here nowadays, they know that they buy the argument that when you take drugs or sell drugs, you're aggressing against society. I made the argument to a judge before that there was a victimless crime, and she didn't buy that.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine.
Or it was actually someone was on heroin and they were driving a car and they got into an accident. I don't know. I didn't get time to read the report because you don't get time to read the report in a lot of cases when you're a public defender. What they do in big cities is that they make law clerks represent a lot of people at their first proceeding. And yeah, sorry you were talking about the conservatives, but I'm still on that. You would think, back in the old days, if you watch police training films from the 1950s, the cops are so nice. And they're always accommodating, and they're like, well, it's your property, it's your house, and I guess I don't have the right to do anything.
Yeah, the peace officer, right? That's a laughable term.
Yeah. Today.
Oxymoron.
Yeah, I've literally had people laugh at me when I brought that up.
I forget that it's radical to think we should legalize all drugs. I'm just so it's such a no-brainer to me now that yeah.
Well, and your point about the whole social engineering thing, Tony and I I don't know if we brought this up on the last show we did together, but there's a new documentary on Netflix called what was it, Dope? Mm-hmm. I think, and it's really wild. It's like a 4-part little miniseries, and it's real, and it's showing you really behind the scenes coverage of traveling along with the cops and the drug dealers, and I can't believe some of the footage they get, the interviews that they get. I mean, it's really in it. And when you're on when they're with the cops, obviously it's just infuriating what you're seeing, what you're hearing. And granted, it's a documentary and they know they're on TV, but there's a lot of this especially this one time when they were busting these guys who they were catching who they thought were the dealers that were causing these ODs from fentanyl, and they were riding along with, and he was just like shooting from the hip of what he thinks about these people and what should be done. And his solution, surprise, surprise, life sentences for first-time offenders for stuff like this. And society just can't. What about the personal rights and like the unreasonable response and punishment? And it's like, well, society can't handle that. Like, this is, I'm thinking about the children kind of thing. And it's this tendency to try to engineer order in society that sends a lot of people down this road.
And to think that a society is such a fragile little eggshell that we don't undergo with rapid change all the time, and we're just fine with it. I mean, human beings are amazingly adaptable. I mean, 100 years ago, we were dying from the common cold and took a month to get across the ocean, and now we're having this conversation where you guys are on the East Coast and we're on the West Coast, and we're talking and having a real time, we're recording it, and all humanity's information is available at our fingertips. And I mean, we adapt. We're not such little snowflakes that we need these social engineers to decide what we can and cannot handle. We're adults. Quit treating us like we're children.
We do what we want.
Well, and you get that divide and conquer too, so much so with the police, where they think they're like shepherds and are sheepdogs or whatever, and the rest of us are just sheep. And then, but they are dealing on the front lines with a policy that is failing. Well, it's working in the ways they want it to work, but it's failing, and they know it's failing, and they're fighting a losing battle, and this will never go away. And it makes them resent the other side, in both ways. Just think, it's just this big wedge, on the criminal side, you get people that hate the cops because they're the mafia, they're a competing mafia, and they're the worst mafia because, all criminals hate cops universally. But on the other side, you get the cops and people that support the state who detest, the communities they're fighting against because they're forced to fight this unwinnable battle. And it's just perpetuating this division.
Yeah, well, it makes them look bad. It's like, hey, man, you're making it a little bit more plain that I'm pretending it's so easy to fix these problems. And hey, guess what, motherfucker? It ain't easy to fix these problems,
Yeah.
And it's certainly not a top-down approach that's going to do it. It's got to be, let the market figure it out, because that's the way things are figured out.
If I can invoke a little Orwell real quick, this war is not meant to be won.
It's meant to be continuous.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing with the war on terror. It ratcheted it up even more. And
a lot of pockets getting lined.
Yeah. So back to you, Tony. And then I know it's getting late, so maybe we should start doing the wind down in a moment here.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that I guess I kind of, Michael Malice always talks about how the technology and all the advancements that capitalism is giving us now is kind of gives him a lot of optimism, a lot of hope for the future. And, sometimes I'm on board with that, sometimes I'm not. But one thing I always do think about is the situation we're in is, it may seem somewhat stable, especially to those who have a comfortable life and are okay. They're happy where they're at, but things can change on a dime. You have all of the Russian Revolution and the Bolsheviks and all these crazy revolutions that have happened around the world just in the last 100 years. And part of me gets the feeling that the state, they're just hanging on and they're tightening their grip as much as they can in some ways. But it's almost hanging on to a bull. The technology is exponentially growing so much that I think they're losing control in a lot of ways, little by little, and they're trying their hardest to not let it seem that way.
Maybe with technology, it's becoming so that it's easier for people to see the man behind the curtain, to quote Oz, the little man behind the curtain. Hopefully, I mean, like with the crumbling of the USSR, like Ron Paul talks about, hopefully that comes to pass. And I hope, everyone just all of a sudden, or within a short period of time, sees behind the curtain. That would be awesome. That would be such a great thing. I guess we just, yeah.
It's definitely in the interest of all dying things to try and convince people that they're still relevant. I mean, you watch any kind of like network news, it's very much like they are the place and the source to go to for the truth. And how dare you go anywhere else, and you wouldn't want to go anywhere else because that's fake news and blah, blah, blah. But their numbers are down. Network TVs facing competition from all sorts of entertainment all over the place, thanks to technology. And yeah, so I tend to agree with you. I tend to be somewhat optimistic to just leave these dying dinosaur type ideas in the past. That would be fantastic.
And that's where Daniel comes in and teaches us all how to do the techno-agorism thing.
We got to get the mixer set up first.
Where's the soundboard been?
Yeah, I know I should be throwing some sounds at you guys and doing the wacky drive at 5. But
chime time.
But yeah, I've been actually pushing a few automated things out on the Black&Gold. Some like marketing and inspirational things to help people hone their message and work towards becoming successful, so that they can vote with their feet and use this exponential growth in technology to insulate themselves from the effects of the state. And I think that I'm really thinking that is a way to go. Like, get in your lifeboats, people. Save yourself first, Jordan Peterson style. Like, sort yourself out, and then be an example for others. Well, continuing to spread the message, right? But there's no reason to, think it's going to be a hot war kind of thing, and that you need to be, initiating any violence or anything like that. Like, this is a peaceful strategy to where you take care of you and yours, and then hopefully others see the example, and you can share it that way.
Yeah, so just to sum it up, libertarians start making some more fucking money.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Create institutions that compete with the state. Right where it hurts.
Yeah, outcompete it.
We need bold people to step in and make these business models like Detroit Threat Management. Could you imagine what it'd be like if Detroit Threat Management centers popped up all over the nation because of, crazy, courageous entrepreneurs?
Yeah, didn't you do an episode on that?
I have my paper. I don't know if I talked about that specifically.
Yeah, I thought I remember hearing you talk about that. That's an interesting thing. That's like a private company, right? That's kind of policing.
There's a Tom Woods episode that y'all should listen to. Just search Detroit Threat Management Center at Tom Woods on the website. The stats are crazy. I mean, they've never killed anyone in their whole thing. They've never been sued, never had any lawsuits, and no one has been hurt or killed who they've taken after. They've had a few agents get hurt, but no one killed.
Don't they de-escalate, though?
Yeah. Yep, that's what they do. They don't.
What an idea.
Kind of important, right? Kind of a good idea.
They said he talks about his tactics, but he says it's preventative, and we de-escalate the situations and try to communicate non-violently and have he says if they think someone's dangerous, they'll pull up right next to him and start talking to him and stuff. So instead of shouting at them and commanding them. If someone wasn't afraid that the police could take them away forever, would they be confrontational with them? If you knew that someone wasn't a threat to you in that way?
Yeah, that's why I say government creates crime. They create all the things that they just then go ahead and justify their existence for. They create a whole bunch of crime, and they're like, oh, look at all this crime. You sure need us, don't you? No, we need you to stop making it. That's what we need.
Wouldn't it be comfortable to know that if a security officer came up to you, you would know that as long as you weren't violent towards them, they wouldn't do anything to you, unless you had done them wrong in the first place. Then, what reason would you have to be confrontational if you know they can't do anything to you physically? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How nervous do you get when you're talking to like some security guard, like a mall or something, versus when some cop pulls you over? It's like, your heart goes up when you know you're being threatened with murder.
Yeah. With the security guard, all they can do is bounce you, or if you stole something, they'll hold you until. But yeah, sorry. What were you gonna say?
Or even just like a bouncer at like a major bar. Like, you don't think that guy's gonna kill you or even tase you, but you're pretty sure you don't want to cross him. I mean, he is literally hired to handle who they are estimating to be the biggest, scariest like patron that's going to walk through the front door. You know what I mean? So it sort of just keeps a lid on. It's not perfect. I mean, things happen, but it keeps a lid on what otherwise should be like a powder keg of interactions, as the night goes on.
Yeah, and when they approach you, they don't say that their first. If a bouncer is trying to calm somebody down, I mean, okay, if it's mid-fight, they're going to get right involved. But if they see something maybe is starting to escalate, they're going to go over there and try to calm it down before they go over there and say, hey, dude, if you don't get the fuck out, I'm going to fuck you up right now. I'm going to physically restrain you, or I'm going to throw you in some kind of cage. Like, they do try to de-escalate, as much as they can. Because, I mean, they don't want to get punched in the face either. I mean, they're just trying to do a job, so they're going to do it and try to keep themselves as safe as possible during the process. So...
Yeah, I think the Detroit, the work that they've done is a better example than bouncers.
In bars, sorry, just to jump in here, bars are subject to market forces.
Yeah, that's true.
So
they can get sued.
You can get sued if there's a bar with a bouncer who's just a maniac and murdering people, and the owner doesn't care and he hasn't fired him for some weird reason. Who's going to go to that bar? These things sort themselves out in the market, but when you have a monopoly, they don't give a shit. They have no incentive to do a better job until hopefully the Detroit people can, go nationwide, or that would be fantastic, man.
Yeah, now everyone needs to start a competing business like that. Yeah. So, should we wrap up then? Wrap up the night with a little closing line?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'll start off first. I just want to mention to everybody that we have the next couple episodes of Don't Waste Your Hate. The one good one is going to be on the Night for Freedom event that Stefan Molyneux and Gavin McGinnis and Michael Malice was there. A couple other guys, Owen Benjamin. So we had a pretty good conversation with Jeff's cousin Rob about that. He was pretty impassioned guy, so it got a little interesting. So that's that one should be don'twasteyourhate.com/27. That should be coming out in the next 2 days, probably like Tuesday. We're going to release that one. So other than that, just keep listening, and I'll pass it along to. I mean, Jeff, you got anything else to add to that, or should we go to the next show?
Don't waste your hate.
All right. All right. How about you, Pat?
Yeah. So, and I'm speaking on February 24th at Agora Fest in the Twin Cities here at the Doubletree Hilton. I don't know what time of day yet, but for anyone listening who's in the Twin Cities area, come check out the festival. I don't have a link to it yet. Maybe I'll put that in the description below. But I'm looking to have some bigger guests on. I got people in mind and looking to do some more foreign policy stuff and just keeping on. So libertyweekly.net. Daniel.
Well, now that we've got the new version of the show, I'm still trying to craft in my mind how to say everything. But we are going to continue to do movies once a week, come out on Sundays on Actual Anarchy, and on Monday we're going to release that very same episode out on lastnighters.com, also on YouTube. Things are live at libertarianunion.com now with the new updated site, and I do like this roundtable format that we've been doing, so let's do this, next final Sunday of the month for February and keep it on. Robert, final word?
I just want to say you guys are some sexy, sexy sluts, and it's been my pleasure and an honor to talk with you tonight. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
That'll have to be an actual Anarchy closing.
All right, guys. Well, I got the music queued up if you want me to play us out, and then have a good night.
Do it up.
In the early days of the internet, radical libertarians were scattered, lonely, and faceless. Without direction, they resigned to scour the web, sifting through content providers in a wasteland plagued by YouTube demonetization, Facebook jail, and covert internet censorship. But then, in 2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.